I know you all missed me. I know. But yesterday was a special circumstance on the South Side. Today's a little bit different, though, because as you could probably hear from the sultry, sweet sound of my voice, it is not at 100% today. So I'm going to give you about 15 minutes, and Chris is going to take you the rest of the way home today on a Thursday on January 4th, 2023, right here on the South Side Beat. He is Chris Halicke. I am a raspy, less than 100% Corey Crisan. We will do our best today from over here. Hello, Chris.
Hi. We need the Southside Beat Nation here to give Corey a nickname for today. Raspy Corey. Just whatever. I'm not. When it comes to naming things, I'm pretty terrible, and that's pretty bad for being a writer and also having been a musician in the past. Coming up with names has always been a bad thing when it comes to articles, when it comes to features, band names, songs. Doesn't matter. I've been terrible. I've always been terrible at coming up with names.
To quote the Beatles, I may not have a lot to give, but what I got, I'll give to you. That's what I'm going to do today. Sick Bluebird Corey. You know what? More like a blackbird today. That's how I feel. I feel like I am into the light of a dark black night. I got the tea, high
rasp. This is a good one.
Nice job, Rick.
I
got the hot tea. I got the water. I got the throat lozenges. I'm doing everything I can. It's not like I feel fine, but it's like the throat, the sinus, that whole thing.
Whiskey.
But I feel completely fine, and I'm negative for COVID, so we press on. We do what we can. And we have Steelers-Ravens coming up on Saturday.
Whiskey.
And, yeah, there you go.
Get some whiskey going. That'll help.
A little honey, too, right in there, huh?
No, that's a hot toddy. I'm need a hot toddy. Just give me straight whiskey.
That's what the tea's for right now. That's what we're working on.
Every time I get sick, it's just straight whiskey, man. That's the best way to go.
I mean, that's an elixir for a lot of people. That's what my grandfather used to do.
That's what they used to do back in the day. That's why I do. I mean, yeah, why not?
All right, Steelers-Ravens coming up Saturday, 4:30. Infected, yeah. Basically, crackly, yeah. I mean, I'm all of that today. I feel great. Like, I feel fine, genuinely. But the throat, the nose, the sinus, nasal way, if you will, just ugly, disgusting.
Yeah.
No Lamar Jackson on Saturday for the Ravens, Chris. That's kind of the big thing to get into today, and you'll read later.
We did hit
PittsburghSports.com.
Yeah, we did hit on that a little bit yesterday. Obviously, but we talked about, like, listen, like, even with Lamar Jackson out, it's still a really good football team. The Ravens are still very, very good. Let's not forget that whether he deserved it or not, whether you think he deserved it or not, Tyler Huntley was a Pro Bowl quarterback last year. Probably one of the best backups in the league, and not only high quality backup, but plays really, really well within the system, the same system that Lamar Jackson plays. And Jim put it this way, Huntley plays us well, and he has played well. Probably even better than Lamar Jackson has against the Steelers. And so I don't think John Harbaugh was going to hesitate at all to give his potential MVP, two-time MVP quarterback, already won MVP, could win another one this year.
Should win another one. I'll say that.
Yeah, I said that yesterday too. I said that, I get a vote for at least for the PFWA one, and I will be voting for him. But I'm just saying, like, you get your chance to rest your MVP quarterback, and then also play a quarterback who has played pretty well against this opponent. So, yeah. And listen, Hodge says it. That's the real reason Lamar is sitting, so he doesn't hurt his MVP. I mean, why wouldn't you? You get an opportunity to rest your MVP quarterback, put a high-quality backup in who plays really well within the system. You don't have to adjust things, in order to play. Oh, well, this quarterback only does. No, Huntley can do. He just doesn't do it as at high of a level as Lamar Jackson does. And you're probably going to be facing the rest of the regular Ravens team. I would be surprised if they rested anybody else, like truly rested, like you're not even getting a helmet.
Yeah.
If they do, then it happens, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
So for this conversation and for the story that I wrote that you'll read on DK Pittsburgh Sports.com later this afternoon, I went back in the time machine and I actually looked at that 2019 regular season finale.
Yep.
Ravens locked up the top seed. They played the Steelers week 18, and they decided to rest, however you want to phrase it, Lamar Jackson, Marshall Yanda, Ronnie Stanley, Earl Thomas. There was a group of about 8 or 7 or 8 that they rested in that game. And the Ravens won that game. And this time, look, I mean, okay, so don't want Lamar to hurt his MVP case. Like, I think it's just more about not him getting hurt, period. He doesn't want to get hurt, period.
Yeah, you just want to keep him healthy if you're the Ravens.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
And it's more than likely going to be more than Lamar. But Mason Cole said it to me today, or yesterday, rather. The Ravens have to dress 47 guys. So regardless of who's going to be out, whoever, however many, 5, 6, however many guys are going to be out, there's still a group of professional football players that will have to play. They can't make all of the starters inactive. So they're going to pick and choose that battle. They're going to figure out on each side of the ball. Now, we already know Lamar's out and Darryl Worley's out, the cornerback. So John Harbaugh is going to have to balance all of that out. Who he feels needs to get some reps, who he feels should play, versus who he feels. Lamar Jackson's a no-brainer layup. And this, to me, is why the Ravens organization is so smart and so well run and such a really good, well-oiled machine, because they don't hesitate to do this, and they block out all of this talk of, well, Lamar could build rust, or, well, look at the Titans game from the playoffs in 2020, divisional round. The Ravens lost that game to the Titans, but that wasn't all Lamar's fault. So they can look at examples all they want. The fact of the matter is the Ravens are doing what they should do, which is rest Lamar Jackson and rest other guys they feel need rested. And that's going to benefit the Steelers, no question. But as you see from the title, and as you just mentioned, Chris, that doesn't guarantee the Steelers win this game.
No, it doesn't. And listen, like, there's even like things like, and I understand fans getting to this perspective here that Frank brings. Says Lamar Jackson usually doesn't do well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that that he's scared of Pittsburgh. Don't you? He didn't look scared earlier this year.
No,
did not look scared at all. And I would very, very, I will very confidently say that if the Ravens receivers didn't crap the bed in that game, the Ravens win that game handily.
They dropped
dropped a lot of passes. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And a couple of them for touchdowns. I mean, they dropped some, not just, they dropped this one on first down, now it's second down. No, dropped passes in the end zone, like, multiple times. Like, these were massive drops, like Chiefs level drops in a game. Like, I'm not trying to take shots anywhere at any of their teams, but we're just like Kadarius Toney level drops. Like, it was bad. And Lamar Jackson played really, really well in that game. I think, now take this with a grain of salt, I'm not just saying this, to back up my argument or anything. I think Lamar Jackson was the highest graded player by PFF in that game. And that time he deserved it. He was really, really good in that game. It was not his fault the Ravens lost that game.
Right.
He did a great, and the one thing that I've seen I haven't like studied Ravens tape or anything like that, but from what I've seen with Lamar Jackson, man, the biggest plays that he's making is with his arm. It's not him running all over the place, and he still ran for over 800 yards this year. He's a really great quarterback, and I don't think the Ravens or Lamar himself are going to be playing or are going to be scared of the Steelers, because they know if the Steelers get into the playoffs as the 7th seed and happen to win a wild card, that's who they're going to be playing in the divisional round. So they have to prepare for the possibility of Lamar playing the Steelers anyway. Yep. And with the way Lamar played against the Steelers earlier this year in the Steelers stadium, mind you, I don't know, man. To me, they're the team to beat in the NFL right now. They really are, because they have embarrassed every other good team. Like, not just beat them, but handily beat them. They just put up 56 on the Dolphins, man. Like, this is a very, very good football team. And, for this particular game, Tyler Huntley, it's still going to be a very, very difficult matchup The Steelers are, you can't just automatically assume, oh, well, the Steelers are going to win. And then, oh, well, maybe now the Bills will lose or the Jags. Like, no, they got to take care of business on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big thing.
No Mark Andrews, that's for sure. Swan says here. Another thing that Monongahela Mike brings up, weather's supposed to be really bad in Baltimore this weekend. Not necessarily on Saturday or during the game, but Friday leading into it.
Yeah.
And it can be real sloppy. But keep in mind, the Ravens have the top rushing offense in the NFL. Most of that is because of Lamar Jackson.
Well, yeah.
And the opportunities he creates.
But that's still Huntley executes that system, though. He plays in that system the same way Lamar does, just not as at a high of a level.
Let's get one thing out of the way, too. Like, they're not resting Lamar Jackson because they're scared of the Steelers or because Lamar doesn't do well against them, which he really doesn't.
For the playoffs, yeah.
This is solely so he does not risk any injury in advance of the postseason. Because quite honestly, for Lamar Jackson's sake, if he wins the MVP and he wins the Super Bowl, especially this year in the same year, he's a future Hall of Famer. That's a resume. That's a resume.
It's on that way. I don't know if I'd quite go there yet, but he's on the way there. Especially if he wraps up another MVP, that'll definitely help with his cause. Then once you start getting to Hall of Fame talk, it's like, okay, did he win a ring? How many MVPs did they win? That's a completely different discussion. But regardless, Lamar Jackson is one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in this league right now.
Yep.
One of the best. It depends on how you like what you value a quarterback. But one of the most dangerous. I don't think that's even an argument. But to kind of turn it toward the Steelers side of things, yesterday, 3 Pro Bowlers named for this team. One of them was very obvious, TJ Watt. Minka, I was a little surprised about just because of how much of the season he's missed. But then again, fan voting has a lot to do with, obviously who makes the Pro Bowl and who doesn't. And Minka is considerably, one of the most popular, great safeties. And when all else fails, vote for Minka.
Right.
But it was kind of good to see Miles Kilburg get one. I know he had the really bad game where he committed 3 special teams penalties in a game and 3 different types of penalties. It was just a bad game. He still has 2 blocks this year. Really good to see him get that. I know he talked about that on the South Side today.
I'd argue Joey Porter Jr. should have gotten in over Minka.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a better selection.
Yeah.
If you're doing defensive backs, now safeties, DBs, cornerbacks, what have you. Miles Kilburg definitely deserving. When you have 2 punt blocks like that, I think a third one was technically ruled a tip and it wasn't a block per se, but I'd have to go back and look. But when you make impact play after impact play on special teams like that, that's what you get voted the Pro Bowl for.
Yep.
TJ, obvious, right? Could win Defensive Player of the Year.
Should win Defensive Player.
Should win Defensive Player of the Year, arguably.
Yeah.
No question about it. But I would argue Joey Porter Jr. should be in over Minka. Maybe even Highsmith. Alex Highsmith has.
Yeah, just Highsmith. I mean, only 7 sacks for Highsmith. The numbers just aren't there. And there have been too many times this season for me when Highsmith has kind of gone radio silent. And it's just kind of been where's he at? And it's not like, oh, he's playing poorly. It's just he's not making an impact. That doesn't mean he's not containing the edge. He's not doing other things that make him, a solid player on that side, but a really great player like we saw last year. I don't know if it's Pro Bowl level for Highsmith. I think it's been a solid year for him for sure. Definitely not a disappointment at all. But I'd like to see a little bit more production out of Highsmith, at least double-digit sacks. I think, especially for what you're paying him. Mm-hmm. I would expect at least 10 sacks a season, or at least close to it, something like that. I mean, your main job on the at edge rusher is to get after the quarterback.
Right. Panzer Strike Pete says All Pro means a lot more. Completely agree.
Yes, it does. Even if you're second team All Pro, it does not matter. First team, second team, you get named All Pro. That's how you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. As you can tell, I'm on the struggle bus with respect to my vocal cords. Little under the weather. Feel fine. Just gotta manage, maintain. So I'm gonna check out.
Yeah, you got a trip to Baltimore to get ready for, so.
And I'm heading to Baltimore tomorrow. So I'm going to rest the vocal cords for the rest of the evening. Chris is going to take you home in the last 15 minutes or so here on the show.
Yeah.
I'm going to step away. I will talk to you all hopefully tomorrow. We'll find out. We will have a show. It's just a matter of whether I attend or not. So we'll talk to you soon. Chris and chat, thank you for joining. And here's Chris. Put your questions in chat for Chris.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll talk. This is the time to do it. So talk to you all later. Chris, it's all you.
Go it. All right, guys. Corey, just hope he feels better. Obviously, this is he Swan says I see a cool karaoke in Corey's future. Yeah. Hope Corey feels better. This is a crummy time of year. Should have went for a run last night, and even here in North Texas, man, we're getting some of the cooler weather. It's always cooler in the evenings and stuff like that, and once it gets really windy and stuff, it can hit your vocal cords in bad ways, even if you're not feeling bad. So, one of the other things I wanted to talk about in terms of like don't take these guys for granted. Not just the guys who made it to the Pro Bowl. Obviously, that's TJ and Minka. They're obviously players that you're going to want to always have. You're going to always just don't ever take a second of them for granted. But I'm beginning to think, especially with the conversations that we were having a few weeks ago about who on the offense can be a leader, can really kind of carry on the Steelers' way of things. There was one thing that happened yesterday, that kind of made me think about this, and that was Najee Harris with the whole angry runs thing. So he won the angry runs thing that NFL, like Good Morning Football, does, and so it's the fifth time he's won the scepter from Kyle Brandt for the angry runs thing, and every single time Najee gets, like the first time he got it, he's all smiling. You can see the pictures, and he's just getting less and less interested in like the angry run scepter. And so fifth time, it's like, what's he going to do for the picture? And instead of sending a picture of him with the scepter, he sends a picture. Najee and the Steelers sent a picture to Kyle Brandt so that Kyle Brandt can tweet it out. He sent a picture of the entire offensive line and tight end group, and with one of the guys, I think it was Mason Cole, holding the scepter. And to me, that was awesome. That to me is the Steelers' way of doing something. It's like, yeah, I like Najee deserves the credit for the countless stiff arms that we saw, against the Seahawks. I mean, he threw the one corner. He had the other run for the 23 yards where he started to stiff arm the guy and then literally carried him for like 10 to 12 yards down the field while just continuing to stiff arm him until finally somebody else were able to get in on him and pull him down. Najee earned his way to that 120 plus yards that he had on the ground, but obviously that does not happen. Yeah, and Hodge says that second touchdown was 3 tight ends. It was. Najee did not get into the end zone by himself on that second touchdown. He got pushed in. But yeah, it's just William says, like, don't forget Warren. I'm not forgetting Jaylen Warren in all of this. I'm not forgetting Warren. And actually, if you go to Najee's Instagram, I saw this yesterday. If you go to Najee's Instagram, there was a commercial with him and Jaylen in it. And it was promoting Dollar General, I think it was, and Bounty. And they're talking about you can't eat wings without Bounty, and you can't go to the Dollar General without buying Bounty or whatever. And it's just them like talking and stuff like that. And you can see like they're buddies, so there's no like Najee versus Jaylen or anything like that. These guys are teammates. They want to be like those two guys, like carrying the rock. But man, yeah, it's just it's still awesome to see Najee, like even if he's tired of the whole scepter thing, to kind of give that credit. Like, I don't get those yards without that offensive line blocking the way they did, and with the tight ends blocking the way that they did. That to me is the Steelers' way of doing things. That is It's putting the team before yourself. And Najee has showed before a lot of traits of that. Whenever there's been a lot of criticism of Matt Canada or whoever else in the past, he's usually the first one that's always come out to say, us players have to execute. You can blame coaches all you want. Us players have to execute. Holding himself and the rest of the players in the locker room accountable. What were the two traits that I would say whenever I describe the Steelers' way? Accountability and excellence. Accountability is a huge thing. That's holding yourself accountable, and that's also holding your teammates accountable. Najee, to me, is the guy who I would think, if there's one guy that I would have to pick on the offense who could be the guy to carry on the Steelers' way on that side of the ball, it would be Najee. Mark asks, hey, Chris, any doubt that Najee gets his fifth-year option picked up? They have to decide that this offseason. I would have a hard time declining that fifth-year option, to be completely honest. Jaylen Warren is you want to keep him around too, for sure. Remember, Jaylen was an undrafted free agent when the Steelers signed him. So his contract ends after 3 years instead of 4, like when a player is normally drafted. So after next season, they're also going to have to try to lock up Jaylen, before the end or before next offseason if they want to extend him. So you got to figure out a way. If you want to try to keep both, you got to figure out a way to do that. And obviously, and Hodge says, a fifth-year option estimated to be at 8.5. Like, to me, well, first off, I read this stat yesterday that since 2021, Najee has more yards than Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, a couple of other like really big name running backs. I can't remember the other two. And of course, like, you're going to put like a few of those other running backs ahead of Najee. Of like, if you had to have Christian McCaffrey and Najee Harris, it's like, obviously you take Christian McCaffrey, like, in terms of like, who's the better running back, but also the best ability is availability, like that whole saying. And Najee's there every game. I mean, even whenever he's kind of battling injuries, he doesn't miss games. He's been there. It's one of the main reasons why he does have over 3,000 yards in 3 seasons. I think he needs like 77 or something. He needs 70 something yards to get to 1,000 against the Ravens. So, and if that'd be the case, that'd be, 1,000-yard season in each of his first 3 seasons. That's a great way to start your career, especially in a passing league. And especially since the fact that the Steelers did not run the football at the early stages of last season or this season. They figured it out a little bit more. And honestly, here's a good thing that Pete brings up. Franco and Rocky Franco and Rocky or Najee and Jaylen, perfect complementary football. Listen, I like the last one that I think the Steelers had. Like, I'm obviously not taking anything away from Franco and Rocky. Obviously, that was like the epitome of like 2 running backs at the same time being phenomenal. But the last one that the Steelers had was, I'd say, Le'Veon Bell and DeAngelo Williams. And obviously, DeAngelo Williams only came in because Lev was going to, obviously serve that suspension. And so they wanted to bring somebody else in. And that turned out to be like, hey, when Lev needs a spell, you got DeAngelo Williams going in there, and DeAngelo's not that much of a drop-off. And that was a phenomenal way to have like a 1-2 punch kind of. But that was still more like Lev's the guy, and DeAngelo's like a really, really good, like, yeah, like let's not, let's not have the drop-off in production be so far down. Mark says Bus and Fast Willie Parker. That was obviously a good one too. But I think especially like in 05, like Willie Parker was the guy, like, and Bus was the short yardage guy. I mean, like Bettis wasn't getting anything more than Bettis wasn't getting like a whole. I think really the Bears game in that season was really the only time that Bettis was like the feature back. I think for the most part, Willie Parker was the guy. And obviously the way that season ended with him getting the 75-yard run in the Super Bowl, that was kind of like, and obviously Bettis retiring and everything like that. But that season was really kind of the beginning, like the full on transition from like, okay, Willie Parker is about to become our main running back. That's bad. Moelde Moore and Najee Davenport, man alive. We're going to be bringing up a whole bunch of obscure running backs from Steelers, like Tomlin era running backs that aren't named Le'Veon Bell or Willie Parker. Maybe we're going to start getting some Isaac Redman mentions and stuff like that. Mark says, yeah, Najee leads like a 20-yard burst. I don't know if he like leads. He's definitely one of the leaders for sure. I'm not like discounting you, Mark. I just know that he's been up there since like near the beginning of the season. Najee's having one of the, like, arguably, like, statistically his best season. Like, I'm really, really like, yeah, like, even if he doesn't get 1,000 yards, you look at everything else, like his yards per carries are up, or his yards per carries up, like 20 plus run yard. I mean, a lot of the main reason why Najee's not having statistically, like, where you could be like, oh, he's definitely having the best season, is Jalen's also getting a lot of touches. Deservedly so. Jalen absolutely has earned his spot at having, getting now whole series whenever they want to give Najee a break. And that's bad. Red Zone Redmond. Yep, I remember him. Who was the other running back? Somebody help me out. And I think they both had a role, like, for example, in the Charlie Batch game against the Ravens in Baltimore. The one where they won where Batch was the backup. There was another running back from that era that I cannot put my finger on. Redmond was in that. It was in that same era as Redmond. I just can't think of his name, and it's going to bother me. Bob, I don't think it was Gary Russell. Gary Russell was on the Super Bowl winning team in 08. Yeah, I don't know if it was Gary Russell. I think, yes, that's what, Jonathan Dwyer. There we go. Jonathan Dwyer. That was the other guy I was thinking of. Man, some obscure running backs. Yeah, Barry Foster. That's going back to my childhood. That was like one of my first favorite players watching growing up was Barry Foster. And fun fact, whenever I was on the Rangers beat, for Sports Illustrated, when I was on the Rangers beat, one of the guys who works in the media, kind of more on the media, on like the multimedia side, like podcasting and stuff like that, went to the same high school and played high school football on the same high school football team as Barry Foster. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I was, told him like that Barry Foster was like one of my favorite players growing up. So, yeah, that was, Chris Fuamatu Mafala. Awesome. Yeah, I man, I'm seeing all these names, man. That's awesome. But yeah, I mean, when we're talking about Najee, man, like Najee's, to me, he is not just in terms of like performance on the field, but now what he's really shown really over the past couple of seasons. Like, he was a captain last year. Again, one of the first guys to really be outspoken against, criticism against coaches and holding the players accountable, holding himself accountable. Did it again this year. To me, he has become that guy. And he, there are going to be a lot of critics of Najee, because when you take a running back in the first round, the expectations, deservedly so, should be through the roof. Like, you should be getting somebody who very quickly, probably in year 2 or year 3, becomes the best running back, or at least one of the top 3 running backs in the league. And I don't think you'd call Najee that. But Najee's still he's still a productive running back. And again, I don't overvalue, and I don't think the Steelers overvalue, that they overvalue like the intangibles, like leadership, what they bring to the locker room. Kamala says not worth a new contract. That's a kind of a different discussion. You really don't have to worry about that for at least 2 more years, because he's obviously under contract for at least 1 more year. And if they pick up the 5th-year option, then for 2 more years. And they could even, if they wanted to, franchise tag him and keep him for a 6th year. Now, that would obviously cost a lot more money. But, and Pete says running back contracts these days are relatively cheap. And I just begin to wonder, I don't know when the CBA is up, but I do kind of wonder how the players union is going to kind of go after that, because there are obviously a lot of running backs who have been very outspoken about the way contracts have gone down. So, oh boy, Michael brings him up. Somebody had to bring him up. Rashard Mendenhall. Yeah. He's going to leave a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths, not only because of the fumble in the Super Bowl, but obviously for a lot of the stuff he has said in the media, or not in the media, stuff he said on his Twitter account and stuff since then. I always enjoyed watching Mendenhall run. I thought he was a good running back. But obviously whenever you have that big of a fumble, I think mentally it's hard to come back from that. And obviously you can, if anybody hasn't watched the episode of The Pivot that, Ryan Clark hosts, that Mendenhall was on, I saw Mendenhall in a different light in that episode than I think I've ever seen him. And I thought that was, pretty revealing. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend to go watch it. Because you could see like honest conversations between he and Ryan Clark in that. And remember, they were teammates in that Super Bowl. And see Mr. Woods, says, he fumbled that Super Bowl away. Like, first off, everybody who was on that team is going to tell you that they did not lose because of that fumble. That was one play. They shouldn't have fallen behind as much as they did. They shouldn't have turned the ball over as much as they did early in the game. I would say the same thing. That, like, yes, that fumble was absolutely costly. To me, it's like, it's in the same realm a little bit, not exactly, but it's in the same realm as the loss to the Cowboys in Super Bowl 30. They fell down. They were down 20-7. The Steelers against the Cowboys, they were down 20-7. They kick the field goal. They go for the onside kick. They get the onside kick. They go down. They score a touchdown. All of a sudden, it's a 3-point game. And all the momentum's on the Steelers side. And then Neil O'Donnell, 2 interceptions right to Larry Brown. And that's the game. And then so, you look at, that Super Bowl against the Packers, interception, turnovers early in that game, they fall down. I mean, when you fall that far behind early in the game, man, it's difficult to overcome that, especially in that big of a game. It is. And I don't think if you lost a game because of a fumble in which you're trying to come back, then I don't know. I just don't think that's was it an impactful play? Absolutely. That was a terrible time to fumble the ball. It was also a really good defensive play. It was helmet on the football. It's the same thing that happened to Jerome Bettis. And I don't usually like to play the hypothetical game, but how is Jerome Bettis remembered if Ben Roethlisberger doesn't make that tackle on that fumble? It's the same type of fumble, helmet on the football, ball pops out, they pick it up. What if they go down and score a touchdown and the Steelers don't win that game? How is Jerome Bettis remembered at that point? One play, whichever way it swings, can change the way. And I think that's kind of a good example of how one play and showing either way that it can swing and shows how somebody can be remembered. Obviously, Jerome Bettis was a Hall of Famer before he even fumbled that football, and that's a big difference between Bettis and Mendenhall. But in terms of like how that one play, yeah, I was like, that's the way it is for a lot of fans. I'd be less pissed if it weren't in the Super Bowl. A lot of people would be. I wouldn't be as pissed because, obviously you don't want to fumble that. And obviously you could see, especially when you watch that episode of The Pivot, how much he's carried that around. I mean, for everybody who's mad about it because your favorite team didn't win, imagine the guy who actually fumbled the ball carries it around with him. I mean, how often do you get, yeah. Mark says, but we were about to take the lead, Chris. Good point about Bettis, though. I mean, that's true. No. All right. So we probably should go ahead and wrap it up. But yeah, just a final thought here, and just to kind of put that point about Najee, man. Don't take these guys for granted. When these players come around, listen, again, when you take a running back in the first round, you expect a lot more out of them. And I'm not saying that criticism isn't warranted, but when you combine the productivity with the kind of leader he has become in that locker room and become quickly in that locker room, to me, absolutely at least worth the 5th-year option. At least worth the 5th-year option for sure. And don't take these guys for granted. And right now with the Steelers, it doesn't need to be a Najee versus Jalen thing. These guys, this team has a phenomenal 1-2 punch at running back. They've shown against the Seahawks. They've shown it in other games. When those two get going and that offensive line is blocking, man alive. They can run the football and they can control the game. And if they're going to beat the Ravens, that's the best way to do it, especially if the weather's going to be bad, if the field's going to be sloppy. Best way to do it is just ground and pound. Beat those guys on the ground. Hodge. Somebody had to bring it up, I guess. Still discuss about the Jesse James catch. It was a catch, by the way. And with the way the NFL calls catches nowadays, it would be a catch. But there's got to be a play that helps change the rule so that everybody can, everybody else can benefit from it in the future. But Jesse James had to be the one to push it over the edge. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Best wishes to Corey that he can, feel better. It's not fun to do podcasts when your throat hurts, and when you don't necessarily have a voice. So appreciate Corey, joining us for 15 minutes. We'll be doing a show tomorrow, no matter what, whether Corey's on or not. We'll do a show tomorrow. We'll do our picks. If Corey's not on tomorrow, I'll get his pick from him. And we'll have some fun, man. If it's not Corey tomorrow, we'll do a rapid fire Friday. It'll be a football Friday, so we'll do rapid fire. We'll answer some questions. We'll talk about the game. More X's and O's type situation, how the Steelers match up, how they can win this game. Obviously, since we know who the quarterback's going to be for the Ravens now, so we'll do that tomorrow for sure. And hopefully Corey can join us. And if he does, then obviously we're still going to talk a lot about this game. It's it's the last game of the year, biggest game of the year. The Steelers win and they get a little bit of help. They're in the playoffs. And then anything can happen. And once the playoffs start, even for this team that's at one point looked like it was not even close to sniffing the playoffs. And now all of a sudden they can get in and who knows what will happen. All right. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow for a closing line. Catch you guys, to quote Michael Scott, catch you guys on the flippity flip.